The dark figure on the road. It was a quiet, crisp autumn night when I found myself driving alone down a narrow, winding country road. The faint glow of the headlights barely cut through the thick fog that had rolled in, clinging to the edges of the forest on either side of me. The road, usually empty, felt unusually deserted tonight, almost suffocatingly so. My car hummed steadily along the asphalt, the only sound the occasional creak of the tires against the damp surface. I had been visiting a friend who lived in a remote house outside of town. It was already past midnight, and I had decided to head home. The clock on my dashboard blinked 12:15 a.m. I wasn't far from home, but this stretch of road always unnerved me. It was known for being isolated and had a history of strange happenings. Locals whispered about eerie figures seen on foggy nights, but I dismissed it as nothing more than rumors. As I continued driving, the hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The fog seemed to grow thicker with each mile, and the road ahead grew harder to see. My headlights barely illuminated more than a few feet in front of me. I turned the radio down, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. Then, out of nowhere, I saw him. A figure appeared on the side of the road just ahead. At first, I thought it was a person walking, maybe a stranded traveler in need of help. But as I drew closer, I noticed something strange. The figure was dressed in dark, ragged clothes, and it stood unnervingly still, not moving an inch. No one walks like that at this hour, I thought. I slowed down as I approached, my curiosity getting the better of me. I wasn't the kind of person to leave someone stranded, but something about this figure made me hesitate. The fog was so thick that I could barely make out the details of the person's face, but I could see the outline of a long, dark coat blowing slightly in the wind. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice trembling more than I would have liked, but the figure didn't respond. I paused a few feet away from the person, wondering if I should roll down the window and offer a ride. I glanced around, but the road was as desolate as ever. There was no one else in sight. It felt wrong, like I was the only one left in the world. I rolled the window down just a crack and tried again. "Hey, do you need help?" Still, no response. The figure remained silent, unmoving. My gut twisted with unease. Something didn't feel right about this. A strange, oppressive silence hung in the air, making it harder to breathe. The longer I stared at the figure, the more my heart raced. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to drive away as quickly as possible. Without thinking, I put the car in reverse and began to back up. But just as I shifted into gear, the figure moved. It wasn't a slow movement, but rather an unnatural, jerky motion, like it had been waiting for me to react. I froze in place, my eyes wide with fear. The figure turned its head, slowly, and for the first time I saw its face. Or rather, the lack of one. The figure had no face. Where its features should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless expanse of pale skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't tear my eyes away, even though every fiber of my being screamed for me to look away and drive off. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, and the car shot forward, speeding away from the figure. My heart was pounding in my chest as I looked into the rearview mirror. I could see nothing, just the blur of the road behind me. I thought for a moment that I was imagining it, that I had been too tired, too rattled. But then something caught my eye. In the mirror, I saw the figure standing in the exact same spot, still watching me. I had driven a good mile, but there it was, as if time had frozen. The figure was there, unmoving, yet impossibly close, as if it had never moved at all. I panicked. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. I had to get out of here, away from whatever that thing was. But my mind raced. Was I being followed? Had I imagined it all? I had seen it. I had seen the figure, and it was still there. I sped through the winding road, my headlights casting long shadows against the trees that seemed to loom closer with every turn. The fog grew heavier, blurring my vision. I could barely see 10 feet ahead of me. The fear gnawed at me, making it hard to concentrate on the road. I kept checking the rearview mirror, terrified that the figure was still following me. Suddenly, the car jerked. My heart leaped in my chest as I swerved, struggling to regain control of the wheel. I was losing it. I couldn't think straight. The fog and the figure had gotten to me. The road ahead opened up briefly, and I found myself on a straight stretch. I couldn't slow down, not now. I was almost home. I could see the faint glow of lights ahead, my neighborhood just a few more miles. I took a sharp turn to avoid a patch of loose gravel and nearly lost control again. The car slid slightly, but I kept it steady. My breathing was erratic. My eyes darted around the darkened road, searching for any sign of the figure, but I saw nothing. A few more miles. Just a few more miles. But as I rounded another bend, my headlights caught a glimpse of something moving in the distance. A figure, the same dark figure, standing still in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt just inches from the figure. I stared, my hands frozen on the wheel. The figure did not move, but it felt different this time. Closer. The absence of a face sent a wave of cold dread down my spine. My mind was racing. Should I get out and confront it? Should I back up and turn around? My thoughts were spiraling into chaos. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. Then, out of nowhere, a voice echoed through the air. Soft, raspy, and distorted, like a whisper carried by the wind. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Go. Home. I jumped, my heart thundering in my chest. The figure slowly raised its arm, pointing toward the darkness ahead. My eyes widened in terror. The voice had come from it, or was it something else? It didn't matter. I wasn't sticking around to find out. I floored the gas pedal, the car lurching forward with a screech of tires. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel the presence of something behind me, something that shouldn't be there. I drove faster than I ever had, my eyes glued to the road ahead. The figure was gone, but the sense of its presence lingered like a dark cloud above me. When I finally reached my home, I slammed the car into park and bolted out of it, not even bothering to turn off the engine. I ran inside, locking the door behind me, my hands still trembling. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove back to the spot on the road where I had seen the figure. The fog had lifted, and the road was empty. There was no sign of the figure, nothing that would explain what I had seen. But I knew what I had felt, and I knew I wasn't alone that night. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small tattered piece of cloth hung from a branch near the road. It was dark and frayed, as if it had been there for years. I stepped closer, my heart in my throat. It was part of a long, dark coat. This version extends the plot while maintaining the chilling atmosphere and adds an eerie twist at the end. Would you like me to continue with more?